Alright, next up on the bench is this 1950 Sentinel Model 332W. This radio I just purchased off of eBay. Once again, not a very expensive radio. It's pretty cheap. Looks alright at first glance and looks really good in pictures. However, there are a few things about this radio that you wouldn't have noticed necessarily off those pictures, and I will show you in a moment. But first of all, Radio TV Phono Nut would be proud of me because I was very upset. He always rails on about this, but eBay sellers pack vintage radios using these airspeed little airbag things. This doesn't work. Unfortunately, the seller of this radio took the radio to FedEx and paid them to package the radio, and they packaged it with those, and in shipping it actually broke the cabinet, which really sucks because although this radio isn't great, the cabinet itself was in one piece. You can see down here these two pieces were broken out of it. It's got a crack. I decided to be a nice person, and I told the seller what had happened. And I said, I'm not going to hassle you. I'm not going to ask for any money back. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to keep the radio. It's not that much damage. I just wanted to let you know. So next time you sell a radio or anything just don't package it using this stuff. It's just, you need to really, make sure it's well packaged and secure inside the box, because these things deflate and the radio just bounces around inside the box and just gets destroyed the whole way out. Anyways, next I'm going to show you the things about this radio that I didn't notice in the eBay pictures. So, it looks like a nice radio at first, pretty dirty, but when you look at these knobs, we got horizontal hold, we got a really dirty vertical hold, we have brightness on here. So obviously these knobs don't go to this radio. They don't even go to radio at all. They go to a television. Not a big deal, but that means I have to change these knobs because I can't use the knobs. So it's basically like this radio came without knobs. So that's a detractor. And then on the back, I didn't get a very good picture of this. Well, that's not the original back to this radio. That is somebody's creation using some hardboard and a drill. Now there is the original AM loop antenna inside there. I peeked in, but I haven't gone any further than that. So I'll probably be making a new back for this as well. Once again, that's another thing that I would have kept me from buying this radio. But these are the things that you kind of want to watch out for when you're purchasing, or at least be aware of them if you're willing to accept that type of a radio or not. But, you live and learn. The thing that worries me about this is if the knobs are different, the back is modified, what is this actually going to look like, the chassis, once we get this radio out? Seller did not indicate whether or not this worked or not, and I'm not even going to plug this into the Variac and test this out. I'm just going to move directly to pulling out this chassis to see what it's like underneath. So once I get this cabinet disassembled, I'll bring you guys back. Okay, the chassis is all out. Let's start with the good. The speaker seems to be alright. The voice coil is not rubbing. One teeny little hole right there. Now, the back of the radio is actually a back of some radio, because this AM loop antenna appears to be really well glued to it, so it must have been cut down. At least that's what I'm thinking. It's just cut down off of some other radio. So the original AM loop antenna for this is gone. And then when we get under here, we got black electrical tape holding in electrolytic that appears to be covered in butcher's paper. Bunch of wax capacitors and some mica dominoes. Everything else doesn't look really terrifying, but I do not like the work that was done with that electrolytic and these this back on this radio. So let's hope that I'm able to get this thing back together and it works all right. But we will see. I'm going to get ready to start digging into this deeper. Okay, so I'm a couple hours in and this is where we're at. My goal is just to make this thing safe to power up. I did not like the looks of that electrolytic that was in here, so I put in a terminal strip and then ran new wires and put in new modern electrolytics. And while I was at it, I quickly changed out all of these wax capacitors with modern capacitors, but I have not been through, I have not checked the resistors, I haven't done the mica caps, I haven't done anything else. All I've done is just clean the controls and put in new capacitors, replace the wax capacitors and the electrolytics. And then we have, this is our pile of carnage, these are the wax. This was in here, this is actually a three section, 20 at 150, 20 at 350, and 20 at 150, but it calls for actually 50 UF, 250s at UF now. So what I did is I just put 247s in there. Then I got rid of this capacitor cover. And so here in just a moment, I'll hook this up and we'll power it up and we will see if it lets out the magic smoke. Okay, so this will be its first power up. First, got the PR57, we're set about 90 volts. Turn that on. So far nothing is on that. And then, I guess, horizontal hold will be on and off, and brightness should be tuning, because that makes sense. Let's see if we get any... Oh, all right. Well, you got a dial light. So there's something. We got some action. PR57. We'll see. This is an honest first power up. I have no idea what. Oh. Hey, I can hear something. So we're getting something. We're also getting a lot of buzzing. I do have a fluorescent light on. That could be... Well, you know, I'm going to crank up the juice on this because it looks like it's doing all right. Let's run this up a little bit. Let's see how this handles that. Go to about 110.
Appreciate you joining us on Freddie and Fitzsimmons on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app. Excellent channel 80. You can always hit us up on Twitter. We always love to see what you have to say. My handle is Coleman ESPN. Ian's handle Ian Fitz ESPN.
It's that crappy
Each
antenna.
And every night about this time, we do a little something that could be a rant or it could be a rave. But it's always something good that we like to call Freddie and Fitzsimmons.
All right. Well, that's a successful first power on. So now I'm on to the next step, which I want to check all the resistors and go through and start seeing if I have those mica caps in stock, and if so, I'll change those out. And then after all that's done, then we will move on to doing an alignment on this. All right, it's the next day, and I just got done going through the resistors, and there was only 3 in here that were actually out. Most of them, 2 of the 3 were off of the 35Z5 rectifier. They were really high, and then I had a 47K that was up to 60K, and that was about it. Everything else read in spec. So probably next up on this we'll be doing an alignment. All right, so nobody's perfect. I was setting up to do the alignment, and I had this hooked up to the converter grid of the 12 SA7, and something arced under here in the chassis, and there was a big boom, and I lost everything. The radio died. But in times like that, you just go and you work your way through it. You just start checking voltages. First thing I did, since it's a series string, pulled all the tubes, checked all the tubes just to make sure they didn't blow. Then I went through the chassis, checked voltages everywhere, realized I wasn't getting any voltages past the switch, checked the switch, make sure the switch was fine, and then I found a broken wire coming off of the switch going into the, what was that? It was the 12 SQ7, the detector. It burned up when I arced something out under the chassis. So, you know, things happen to everybody. You just take your time, you go through it, and you figure it out. That's the one thing that's really forgiving about series string vacuum tube radios. Are really good to learn on, because when things go wrong, you can almost always fix them. They're pretty forgiving in that regard. Okay, I am setting up for my alignment. This time, I'm hoping to not have any fireworks. I'm getting ready to pull the tubes and clean up this chassis a little bit. It's just really filthy. Alright, the next thing that I've noticed is that my tuning capacitor is kind of hard to turn. What I do for that is I use a Zoom spout oil, and you go in here and you can see, if you look right inside there at the, here, let me see if I can point out, right down there you'll see some ball bearings. You put some oil in there, and then I put just a little drop on the end right there. That really makes a big difference. Even if your capacitor doesn't feel like it takes much effort to turn, it's a good idea to do it. If you have your chassis out, it really makes it feel a lot nicer. The other reason that could be, I could have problems, is there's supposed to be a grommet to isolate the speaker from the chassis, and I only have half of it in there. So one of the next things I'm going to do is work on picking out that old bit of the grommet, and then finding one that's appropriate that'll fit in there and replacing it. Okay, so that little rubber grommet's been replaced, and I'm still working on cleaning this chassis up. It's really dirty. Alright, the chassis is just about done. I put some white lithium grease along the area where the pointer needle slides. I cleaned up all the dirt and dust on here. I cleaned the tuning condenser. There was a piece of insulation chipped off here where the dial light is. The rest of the insulation all the way down is really good. So instead of replacing all of that, what I did is I just put some silicone over that, and that should insulate it well. So yeah, everything else is ready to go. I'm getting ready to start on the cabinet next because this is all lined and finished. All right, moving on to the cabinet. Now, what I'd like to do to start is I'm just going to use some of this. This is just a mild cleaner, and a blue towel, and just go over and try to clean off the 70 years of dirty hands and cigarette smoke and anything else that's on this cabinet. After that, we can move on to polishing, but right off the bat, I just want to get it as clean as possible, and then we will work from there. All right, so I got as much as I could off using this cleaner. So I'm going to move on to using some of this Novus number 2 and polish out Bakelite as best I can, and go around in sections and polish it up by hand and see how it looks. Okay, so the cabinet is all polished up. Looks pretty good. So the chassis is going to go back in next, and then I gotta hunt around and see if I can find some knobs. So it's all back together and it's working good.
Specifically the coronavirus, but yes, those things still in front of us. The election.
I found some knobs. They're not exactly what I would like to have, but I'll use them until I dig something else up. Everything else came out really good. The only thing else that's left is the back of the radio is still the back that was on here when I got it. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with that. I'm kind of looking for another back, see if I can find something else that'll work. But otherwise, it's pretty much done. I think it came out nice, and I want to thank you for spending the time watching me restore this radio. I have a few more videos I'm working on right now, so if you enjoy this type of content, please consider subscribing or leave me a comment. I really appreciate it. Until the next one, take care.